Hello, this is Pot. In this script, I like to talk about the introduction of Adobe After Effects. Adobe After Effects is image compositing software package, which is, if you're familiar with Photoshop, this kit could be considered as a Photoshop of video. First, when you open your After Effects application, you will have option of to create a new project, open project, and team project, and open in the team projects. So in this case here, I'm going to create a new project. So on the new project, you will have the choice. You can create a new composition or a new composition from footage. When you create a new composition, you create everything from scratch. But if you create new composition from footage, that means you will have to open your footage as a composition, such as your Photoshop layer projects or Adobe Illustrator project. Okay, so in this case here, I like to show you we're going to create a new composition from scratch. Right. First, when we open up, you will see the new composition setting. So you can name your composition. So in this case here, the default is composition 1, or I can name it composition demo. And you will have the first tab as a basic, right? So there are a few presets here. You can see a list of presets, but nowadays the standard is HDTV 1080 25 frames per second or 29.97 frames per second. So in case this one I using 25, so it's going to be a pixel 1920 by 1080. The aspect ratio is 16:9, and the pixel aspect ratio is a square pixel, rate of 25 frames, resolution full, and start time code as all 0. And then duration, you have 4 set of number. The first set is 1 digit. 1 digit is a minute, and the second 2 digit is a second. Oh, sorry. Let me go over again. The first digit is hour, and the second set is minute, and the third set is a second, and the last set is a frame. And on the background, you can pick the color you like. You can select whatever color you want as a background. If you don't like, you can change it. And then you have a second tab on here is option. So if you want to click anything on the motion blur, shutter angle, shutter phase, so this kind of setting on the advanced, I just leave it as preset. And then on the rendering 3D renderer option, right, you have 2 choice or 3 choice in this case. You have classic 3D, cinema 4D, and ray trace 3D. So in this case, I just left it as the default is a classic 3D. Okay, so everything else should be okay. So let's set okay. Now, when you look at this, right, you're going to see a few things going on here after you click OK. Let me explain the basic user interface of Adobe After Effects. You will have this footage. Sorry. You will have this project menu right on the left hand, and all the menu and the tools on the top. So you have selection tools or V as a shortcut, hand tools or H as a shortcut, zoom tools as a C as a shortcut, and rotation tool as a W as a shortcut, and unite camera C as a shortcut, and the pan behind It's V as shortcut. So you have all these tools available on the top right here, and then you will have a window, which is in this case here, I would consider as a canvas in Photoshop. So right now it's displayed as 50%, right? I can also choose the grid or guide on here. The first one, you have the title save and action save area. So in this one, right, you can see the outer frame here, which is the action save area, and the inner frame, right, which is the title save area. So you don't want your title that you want to make sure people can read it. Do not go beyond this frame guideline right here. And if you want your action to be seen on every screen, right, just to make sure your action stay within this frame right here. And you also have some vertical crop on here to make sure every your content, if it in this grid, right, is going to remain visible when it will be cropped for some standard definition TV, something like that. But now I guess no more standard definition. So if that's the case, so you can stay within the action save area, should be fine. But just in case you want to work with 4:3 proportion instead of 16:9, you will have to stay within these two frames right here. Okay, and then the proportion grid. Okay, so in this one, it's just like a guideline for you to set up the composition, and then the grid, right, have more detail. And then I can just turn off the grid and turn off the guideline. But the only thing I like to show is the title and action save, right? So you can also activate the ruler on that as well, so in case. And then this is your time, and toggle between mask and shape mode. And then this is take a snapshot or a screen grab of your scene and show the channel. So it's like show its channel. And right now you can set this rendering display as auto. You can set as a full resolution or a quarter, up to you. And then the scene, right, you will have active camera front, left and right, but right now I just leave it as active camera on one view only. Okay, now let's talking about the detail on here, right? Whatever you select on the screen or whatever you select from the menu, for example, if I select the primitive shape as the star on here, and then I draw the star on the screen. Okay, so all the information will be changed accordingly, according to the star. So in this case here, when I draw the star on, right, the star will show up on the projects right here, as well as it's going to show on the timelines below here. Okay, so the basic idea of animation in After Effects is based on keyframe. When you look at your star, right, you can change the star shape. For example, you can just go to rename and change to whatever you want. So in this case here, I'm going to just say, okay, star shape layer 1, STAR, and then enter. So now I got a new name of that. And I like to show you the basic transform, which is you're going to work with that most of the time. So on the basic transform here, you have choice of 5 options. The first one is called anchor point, right? Anchor point, the idea of anchor point is the where is you set as a center of your objects. So normally when you draw, or if you not define, the default is going to be a center of your state. So right now you can see the anchor point is right here, okay, and if you rotate, it's going to rotate around that anchor point, okay. So that's why we have to set the anchor point the way we like. For example, in this case here, I want my anchor points, you know, X and Y to be, I like to move the star into the center of the anchor point. So how do I do that? So I just go to the number here, and I can adjust to move the star closer to the center, and then move it to the bottom like that. So that is the first way to adjust the anchor points. Or you can do it visually, you know, not by the number. You can do it visually. Now I'm going to undo this, okay, undo that. So the good thing about After Effects, you can do a multiple undo. Now I will set the anchor point right to the star, right? There is a shortcut on the keyboard. Is you can it's Y. So when you press Y, right, and you select your selection tool or V, okay, and then when you press Y, you see what happened? Your cursor will change, you know, from the typical cursor. It's going to be a cursor with the anchor point. So it allow you, after you press Y, right, it will allow you to click and drag your anchor point to wherever you want to set as a center. So right now I like to move my anchor point from the center of the state to right into the center of the star. And now I want to deactivate that Y option, so I can press V again. So it's going to be go back to the normal selection tool, okay. So now if you look at my anchor point now, it's center of the star, and now you can see if I rotate the star, it's going to rotate allow itself, not going to rotate allow the screen anymore, okay. So this is the first thing that we're going to do with the anchor point on the transform. And then the next one is the position. So the position, you can move the position visually by click and drag. So you can see the number is moving according to, you know, to the screen, right? It's based on upper left corner as a 0, 0 coordinate, and all the way to here, right, to the right hand. It's going to be 1920, which is the size of my screen. And then if you go to the vertical y-axis, below here and on the bottom, it's going to be at 1080. All right. Okay. So now it's based on the center of the anchor points. I can do it via the number right here, you know, by click, hold, and drag to adjust the position mathematically, right? The same thing with the scale. The default scale is 100%, okay. You can also change the X and Y, or the width and the height of the scale. Right now, if you scale it, you know, if you scale it, right, you could distort it, okay. Okay, let me undo this. If you hold down your shift key and you scale it, right, it's going to remain proportionally. Or you can click on the chain icon here to unchain it. So this means you can distort, you know, vertical and horizontal differently, all right. And then the next one is the rotation. Rotation is have two set of number. One start with 0x. Is refer to how many revolution, how many times you want this going to rotate. And then the second number is mean the degree. If I want to rotate this star, right, 45 degree, I can just punch in 45 degree. So it's going to rotate positive 95 or 45 degree, all right. But if I like to rotate one round, which is 360 degree, right, instead of punching 360 degree, so I can just punch 1x. so it's going to give me the same result. And then opacity. So opacity, everyone know opacity, right? The default is 100% opacity, and if you want to change to 50% opacity, it's going to be a semi-transparent on that, right? So okay, let me undo, and all of this is also have a shortcut for that. So instead of try to toggle transform and go to set everything manually, you can access it by using press the shortcut keyboard on the letter. For example, A, you press A is for anchor point, and then P for position, S for scale, R for rotation, and then the last one, which is transparent, is quite different. Instead of transparency, if you look at this one, right, you look at the transform, it's using the word opacity, but the shortcut instead of O is T, which is for transparency. So that is kind of awkward, but it's been right here with After Effects since the beginning of the time, so let's keep that way. Okay, now I like to show you a basic animation in After Effects. After Effects using keyframe based animation. So if I like to scale this a bit smaller, right, and then I want this to start to animate from one size to another size. So in this case here, I have 5 seconds, 5 second long duration. Okay, and now the way to do the animation on the keyframe, so you have to think first what kind of transform you want. So in this case here, I want the star to to fly over the screen from left to right. So now so that means I will need to work with position, so it's P. So when I use P as a shortcut, right, call up position, the first step is you have to find your current time indicator, which is the default will start at the beginning, right? So now you're ready to create your keyframe animation. So the way to create a keyframe animation, you can start with the stopwatch by clicking to activate the keyframe. So now when I click on the stopwatch, you will have one diamond show up on your position. So that means also as well as your timeline right now as a 0. And then you can change your current time indicator, move it to where you want, right? So at the end of the time, where would you like your objects? So the next step, after you move your current time indicator, so you move your objects, okay? So you move your objects to the end, right? To the right hand. Now you can see, right, your object is going to appear on the right at 5 seconds. Okay. Now I can test the animation by moving this current time indicator back and then press the space bar. So now I can see my star moving from left to right, right, based on my keyframe, right? So, and it's going at the very consistent speed, So what I like to point out a bit here, if you look at this, right, and you select on it, you're going to see a dot, right? Each dot represents 1 frame. So right now I have 25 frames per second and I have 5 seconds. So that means I'm going to have 125 dots from left to right distribute equally, okay? Equally. So that means each frame is going to distribute equally to time, at a very consistent speed, all right? So now I like to add some transform option. For example, if I like to add rotation, I can just go to R and activate the keyframe. Okay, and then on the beginning I like to start at 0, right, all 0, and then I want the star to rotate half of the circle, which is 180 degree, right, at the end. So now I punch in 180 degree positive, right. Now I'm going to play the animation, see what happened. So now you can see the star is rotating 180 degree across the screen. Okay. All right. So you get the idea, right? So instead of 180 degree, if I want this star to rotate instead of 180 degree, right, I want this star to rotate 3 revolution. So instead of punch in the number on the degree, now I just punch, okay, rotate 3 times and enter. Now you see what happened. So I just go back to the beginning and then press spacebar again. So now you can see the star rotate 3 revolution, from left to right in 5 seconds, something like that. Okay. So that way you can see the effects of the transform. And after that, if you need to add something else, for example, so I do not want the star to travel in the straight line anymore, so I just go to position, and when you go to position, right, you see the left arrow and the right arrow. So this arrow allow you to navigate to the next keyframe quickly. All right. So if I like to add additional keyframe on here, for example, I like the star to travel to second 2, right? And on this 2 second, right, I want the star to reposition it. Instead of on the bottom, I want the star to to go right here on this position, right? So you can see if I move the star, right, it's going to give me the keyframe in real time. At the same time, right, the keyframe is updating. So now you can see if I press spacebar, you can see the star is rotating and is landing on the ground and going up, right? So it's like the star is like taking, landing just like a airplane, and then it's taking off. Okay, now what I like to point out, right? You can also, when you click on this, right, you see the hand tools, which is allow you to do something very interesting. So in this case here, if I move the hand tool, if I move the hand tool, so it can, give me a very interesting movements going on right here. So instead of going a straight line, right? So now it's going like a curve. Okay. So now you can see the star is going more naturally. Okay, more naturally. And I want some additional movement on this particular part, right? Instead of using the landing effects, right? So I want this star, okay, to, like kind of bouncing from the floor. So the way to do that, right? Instead of using hand tool, I press Option key on the Macintosh or Alt key on the keyboard, right? Click the Alt key and hold it, and then you drag the hand tool on one side, and then you release. Now you can see instead of smooth landing, right, it's going to be a bouncing effects on here. All right, and I can tweak the hand, right, to create a path that have different movement on that. Okay, now let me show you how it's going to look, if I tweak the sharp turn on that. So now you can feel some resistance of the ground. When the star is bouncing to the ground, right? It have some resistance, or spring it up, something like that. Okay, now this star is travel from left to right is using about 5 seconds. So now I like to show you something. Instead of 5 seconds, right? If you change your mind, you want to make it like 2 seconds, right? So how we going to adjust the project, and also if I want to change the color of the background, so you can do it by go to composition and composition setting, right? So instead of 5 seconds, I'm going to change it to 2 seconds, and then you may also change different size, different frame rate, and in this case here, I can even change the color of the background as well. Okay, so alright, so I'm going to make a darker background, maybe it's almost black background. Okay, so now I click OK. So now I got that, right? Now instead of 5 seconds, so now it's become only 2 seconds, and you see what happened. So my animation still going on in 2 seconds. One thing I like to warn you about keyframe, right? So even though you can add the keyframe by clicking here or by moving to the new position, right? One thing that you don't want to, you got to be very cautious, is the stopwatch here. Since you activate as a keyframe, now if you click it again, right, all the keyframe, all the keyframe, it will be, if you click it again, you see what happened? All the keyframe gone. Okay, so this is really important. You could lose like a lot of work, since you have to keyframe precisely, and if your keyframe gone, right? But as soon as when you click on it, right, and your keyframe gone, don't panic. You can always use Command C to undo that as well. Command C or Command Z to undo that. Okay, so now I'm going to remove that keyframe from position and rotation, right? So now I like to show you, okay, let me start over for this star right here, right, and make it back to 0. Okay, so now I like to show you something more a bit on the idea of animation. Okay, for position is P, right? And I want this position as a beginning and at the end at 2 seconds. I'm going to just draw that. Okay, now the reason I like to show you here, because it's going to give me some of a natural look animation on that. So the technique that I like to talk about, since I mentioned about the frame, which is right now is 2 seconds, 25 frames per second. From this left to right is totally 50 frames. So when you have that 50 frame distribute along this path right here, it's equally. So that means the object will traveling equally speed at equally speed, but normally it's not equally speed, right, in real world. So when you look at your car, or when you look at your fan, electric fan, or you look at when you're running in real world, right? When you start running, you have to take off slowly, and then you gain more speed, to make it faster. And then before you stop, you gain top speed, and then you have to slow down a bit before you fully stop. So the concept of easy or easing in or easing out, right, which been very, very useful for animation technique. So what I like to show you here, if I add something, okay, for example, if I want my keyframe, right, if I want my star to start taking out slowly, right, so I use easing out or easy is out. Okay, you can call easy is out or easy out or easing out. It's up to you. So in this case here, if I use easy out, so this means when you can look at the point here, at the beginning the star is very tight together. So this means the star is the star, each frame of the star, right, is going slowly, right, and then gradually faster. Right, now let's take a look what it look like. So you can see the beginning of the star when it's taking out, it's taking slowly, and then it's getting more speed, it's faster. Okay, so and then if the star reaching to the destination, I want the star to be slower as well. So that means I will need to use ease in or easy ease in. Okay, so now you can look at the frame on this graph, on this part right here. On the beginning, right, you can see a very tight space at the beginning, and then you have more space on the middle, so that means it gain more speed. And then when it's coming back to the end, right, it's getting slower again. Okay, now I'm going to move this position. Okay, okay, I hold down my space bar and then I move this position to be right here. Okay, and then at the beginning I move my position to be right here. Okay, so now you can press spacebar and see, right? So slow start, fast, and then slow down when it rested to destination, something like that. So it gives you a more natural look, right? And of course, if I like to add something here, additional keyframe, right, I can do that to position right here. And if I hold down my Alt key or Option key, right, and drag it up, right, so I can tweak this point even more extreme. So you can see it's going slow and fast at the end. The same thing here is going to be, you know, fast right here, but slow in the beginning. Okay, now let's play this animation and how it looks like that. Okay, now what I like to add more, right, for the rotation, so I press R and add the rotation. The beginning at 0 and the end maybe at 1 revolution, which is 360 degree. So now let's play. Okay, what about if I like to add more? So I can change this revolution from 1x to maybe 3x, and now you can see what happened, right? So I can go back to P for position and then move this out of frame, right? So you can see this object out of frame, and then at the end this object out of frame right there. Okay, now let's play the animation. You can play around with the scale and opacity as well. Okay, and one thing that I like to mention to make this animation even more interesting is a motion blur. Okay, so what you do, right, you can add the motion blur by enable motion blur on here by clicking on that and activate the motion blur icon on each layer. So when you do that, right, when you do that, you will see the blur effects. So it gives you more realistic motion movement. All right. So you may save this file as an example and to experiment later from the links I provide below. Thank you for watching.